Good morning, guys. So this morning I'm going to go over tourniquets and the concept of how they work. I have a couple here that I'll show you. But the idea of a tourniquet is to stop bleeding from a limb when direct pressure won't cut it, when direct pressure isn't stopping the bleeding. So a lot of times we see this if there's massive trauma or really big laceration to an artery, a really big cut to an artery. If you fall down a hill, your leg gets ripped off, or something like that. A bear attack. If your limbs are squirting blood, a lot of times direct pressure won't stop the bleeding. So the tourniquet is designed to squeeze, to pinch off the arteries to stop the bleeding. So that's usually our main focus. That's our biggest problem at that point is bleeding out. So I have a couple here. I'm going to show you. This is one we use um, on the Medic, just because they're fairly clean. It is just almost like a piece of rubber. It's not rubber, but it's very similar. It's stretchy. Um, so you're basically just, let's use this as an example. If I have let's say my arm gets ripped off right here around one of these tattoo bands here. My arm gets ripped off here, squirting blood. Um, just putting direct pressure on it somehow won't work. So what we want to do is we want to go about an inch above the injury. What we're going to do is we're going to tie it off. I know this is really not a good video. We're going to tie this around the injured arm or the injured limb as tight as possible, and you'll know that it's tight enough when the bleeding stops, right? So that's our goal. If it's still bleeding, still squirting, it's not tight enough. We can, let's get it tighter. This is not the most effective because it has so much stretch, but it is an option. We usually use it just to start an IV, so it kind of makes the veins swell up a little bit. But this is an option if you have nothing else. This is called a capped tourniquet. It's a combat application tourniquet. So these were designed for the military. I think almost all service members that go overseas in a war carry these on them now, so they can use it for themselves or for someone else. These ones are really nice because they're designed to be used one-handed if you need to. So the concept is this: you open this up, you can slide this, make this as big as you want, slide it around. If it's your arm, if it's your leg, you put your leg through, and then you tighten it down. So, I'm going to use the same arm. You can see I'm applying it here, and this is again one where you're gonna make it tight. That's the whole idea. So boom, I've got this on. Now you can see it's still a little loose, and that's certainly not going to stop any bleeding. So what they've designed is this little stick, and this is basically attached to the inside of the tourniquet. And as you twist, this thing squeezes down, and it tightens and tightens and tightens. And then once it's tight enough, which is when the bleeding stops. I don't know if you can see this. This has a little notch where you can kind of tuck this in so it stays where it is. It's not going to loosen. You cover this up, and there's a spot on here where you can write the time. If you guys are out in the wilderness, maybe the time isn't as important, but for a lot of applications, the doctors and the hospitals want to know how long's a tourniquet been on. Generally speaking, once the tourniquet is applied and it's successful, we don't take it off. That's for the hospital to make that call. So this is a really good thing if we can find them to have in your personal first aid kit. I don't know how much they cost. Some sort of tourniquet is really a good idea to have, especially when you go hiking. So what can you use if you don't have that? If you're out hiking and you don't have a pre-made tourniquet. I know a lot of people think maybe using shoelaces, and if that is the last thing you have, I suppose you can. Generally speaking, you want the constricting band of whatever it is to have a little bit of um, girth to it. You don't want it super skinny like a shoelace. You want it to be wide a little bit. Um, so something that a lot of you guys have is a belt. A belt works great. If you're wearing it, take it off your waist. This is actually really easy to use on yourself if you need to. It's my arm, boom, and I can keep tightening as much as I need. Um, Sometimes you might have some supplies with your tent. Not really guy lines, but um, another option is straps on your backpack. So, like I carry my laptop in this little computer bag. This strap is perfect. And this actually detaches. It's got two clips where it can detach. Um, Something with a little bit of width that you can tie it off. I guess one thing I didn't mention. So if you have it tied around the concept, it is still the same as this little bar here. You would tie the strap around your arm, grab a pencil or I don't know, marker, something, a stick if you're out in the wilderness, and you're going to wrap the ends around the band, and you're just going to twist. And that twisting motion, it's just like what my shirt is doing. My shirt is constantly getting tighter and tighter just by twisting, and that will slowly squeeze the arteries and pinch them off so that there's no more bleeding. There's a lot of other factors you can take into account, but if you are bleeding that severely, that's your only worry right now. So a lot of the other stuff, risk of infection, blah blah blah, not as important. If you don't stop the bleeding, you're not going to live long enough to worry about infection. So um, obviously, once you've killed the bear, then you can proceed to take care of a tourniquet, use a tourniquet. So those are a couple ideas. I would love to see if you guys can demonstrate one in some fashion. Um, Use a partner if you want. I don't know how the cameras are working. You tie it on your leg. Obviously, don't actually tighten it to where the limb starts turning purple, but kind of show that you know the concept of it of putting something on. It doesn't matter what it is. Find something cool to use. I'd love to see what kind of ideas you guys come up with, and let me know what you got. I'll talk to you guys soon.